Hey there, welcome to This Week in Pharmacy. I am your host, Todd Uri, founder of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, and I'm excited to be here with you today. If you are watching on YouTube, you'll notice my t-shirt. It says Pharmacy Insurance Group, RX, and it says join or die. This is a t-shirt, really beautiful t-shirt if you're listening on your podcast stream and you don't see it. Blue, and it's made by the Waypoint Group, the Waypoint Company. You can find more about them by going to waypointus.com. They are an organization that is dedicated to the success of our independent community pharmacies. And Matt and Ben Coakley lead that company. They've supported the Pharmacy Podcast Network. They helped us at the McKesson Idea Share 2024. What an amazing event that we just got back from this week. What a wonderful week. A shout out to McKesson for putting on such a powerful gathering of pharmacists and making it feel like it was a hometown environment all over the place with their decorative settings. A shout out to IPC, the Independent Pharmacy Cooperative, for supporting the Pharmacy Podcast Network there as their press partner. We are excited about the support that not only we're getting, but more importantly, our hosts are getting. And today is an interesting day. We have a lot to share. We have some things that are very controversial that have come up that we're going to be sharing. It's a story of Joe Ed Holt. And I'm not sure if you've heard about this, but he was let go from his employer because of his voicing concern of a bill that was impacting the state of Georgia. So you're going to hear about that. You're also going to hear about the support from the NCPA Foundation and their mission to support community pharmacy and us preparing to celebrate community pharmacy in the upcoming annual event, the NCPA 2024 in Columbus, Ohio. I think it'll be one of the first events that I get to not have to go to an airport to go to, which is a treat for me. I get to drive from the Pittsburgh area down here in Brownsville and go over to Columbus. So I am looking forward to that. Hey, let's get into the news. I tell you what, a lot is happening in our world, in our pharmacy world. As you can see, Walgreens is in a slight meltdown right now with regards to significant closures. Which pharmacies have closed in the state of Delaware so far, but this is going to have an impact on a bunch of pharmacies throughout the United States. It says that the pharmacy chain confirmed its plan to close underperforming stores in an email stated to USA Today on Thursday morning after the parent company, Walgreens Boot Alliance, disclosed the news in its 2024 third quarter fiscal results. You know what? I want Walgreens to succeed. I want them to be healthy for their communities, but you can't do that in a broken payment system, AKA the PBMs. And I know that you're coming on TWIRx and you probably get tired of hearing about PBMs. I know I do, but they're still an issue. They're still causing massive problems in our state of health and public health. Look up that article. It was just published today. And This Week in Pharmacy, we wanted to cover this. I also want to touch on another article, which is much more positive, and that is from Pharmacy Times, just released an article called "The Future of Pharmacy: Enhancing Chronic Disease Management with Food is Medicine," or I'm not sure if they wanted to say food as medicine, but this is a report that they're prefacing from the Milken Institute, which shares its insight and actual recommendations for pharmacies integrating food as medicine. FIM, a medically led nutritional framework emphasizing the opportunities for pharmacists in supporting chronic disease prevention, management, and treatment. I am so thrilled to read this today. A shout out to Pharmacy Times for publishing this. But you as independent community pharmacists, you as hospital system pharmacists, as specialty pharmacists, I don't care where you're at. If you're in touch with patients, you have an amazing opportunity to start consulting with nutritionists, dietitians, your physician, and designing meal plans based on what's good for that patient at the time, increasing in specific vitamins along with other pharmacological therapies. The mixing of pharmacological and holistic and food is really the future. And everybody knows that. And a shout out to the godfather of functional pharmacy, Robert Kress. He and I had a wonderful conversation earlier this week. And that's all he does. He's done it for 22 years, and he's training pharmacists to dig deeper into functional medicine and how that's going to impact people's longevity and health. And it's not just about the pharmaceuticals. It's not just a magic pill. Take it, and you're all better. It's a combination of your foods. A matter of fact, I think it's more about foods, because it present, if you're eating right, obviously you're not going to form a lot of the sicknesses that we've heard about. Also, want to touch on this last article, the title. And by the way, this comes from over in London through the Pharmaceutical Journal, the Royal Pharmaceutical Society official journal, and it was just published today. It says, "Is pharmacy fully versed in the intricacies of research ethics?" Now, this is really interesting, and I want to tell you why. This article gets into how artificial intelligence is going to impact medicine, how it's going to impact pharmacy, and how it's going to impact the health of people, and how to govern that, and how the ethics of this are in play. And I'm pretty excited that we've partnered with PEER, that's Pharmacy Ethics, Education, and Resources. A shout out to Dixie, who's running that. She's a champion. If you don't know her, go to PEER. That's PEERRX.org. Once again, PEERRX.org. And that's the Pharmacy Ethics, Education, and Resources. And Dixie, by the way, is going to be doing a multi-part series that's going to include continuing education on the ethics of pharmacy and what you should be thinking about in the bigger picture as a pharmacist, and how your choices and your own beliefs will impact your patients and their families and the community. And it's something really to think about. So I really have high respect for Dixie and PeerRx. By the way, PeerRx was brought to the Pharmacy Podcast Network by the Waypoint Group, by the Waypoint Company. So thank you to the Coakleys for letting me know about PureRx. And I'm excited about today's episode. We're going to dig into a really interesting interview with Joe Ed Holt. And then we're going to be talking with the new executive director, Sonia, the new executive director of the NCPA Foundation. You're not going to want to miss it. But before we get to that, I do want to play some interesting news from one of our new clients and partners, the RxMile team. I'm going to turn it over to Kunal. Take it away, Kunal.
Hi, Todd. Thanks for having me on this week. So today what I want to discuss is a Wall Street Journal article that was put out here on the 25th of June here. I actually reposted it on my LinkedIn account, where we're talking about mail order pharmacy, right? In the sense of it was supposed to keep costs down, but is actually doing the opposite, right? So this is what people want to look at. I look at it as always been penny wise, pound foolish to send medications through the USPS mail, where it can take up to 7 to 10 days to get there. So you're dealing with delays. Then on top of that, a lot of these veterans who are subjected to have to utilize this, that need certain drugs that are narcotics or whatnot, it's identifiable once you see the green sticker on the actual package. And then there's a lot of medications that are being stolen. Not to mention people are being robbed at gunpoint to get their universal key to get into these mailboxes. Are they trying to get in there to get papers that they can use for whatever they need to make airplanes, or are they looking for items? Medication is one of those, right? Now, the biggest complaint I've always had, and Loretta Bosing is a great advocate to this, and I can condone her for all she's done and her situation she had with her child, is this medications that are being sent are being put inside a metal mailbox. Here in the state of Florida, my mailbox can reach up to 150 degrees. So U.S. Pharmacopoeia guidelines states that medication should not go higher than 86 degrees and kept in that type of storage. You're talking about putting something in a mailbox that, I don't check my mail every day. I don't know how many people do check their mail every day. So it's almost like they're putting it in an oven, right? So these medications are being cooked. Can you say placebo effect? Do you think that the medications are not as effective as they would be if they weren't in this position, right? People value everything that they deliver from food, produce, Amazon. How are we not valuing the most important thing, which is medications, right? Because these are maintenance medications, so they're pennies on the dollar or a couple dollars, not expensive. We're supposed to devalue that. Aren't these the medications that all of our senior citizens, our grandparents are taking in order to maintain, as they're called, maintenance medications? So I really feel that with the spotlight that's going on right now with the PBM regards to reimbursement rates, DIR fees, and whatnot, one of the biggest things that we need to handle and attack is the fact that $150 billion worth of medications that was never going through a mail order pharmacy, let's say 15 years ago, is now been siphoned from independent pharmacies and some chain pharmacies. Now, I feel that the two people in this country who have the right to choose how they receive their medication, how they receive their health care, how they can go and walk into a local pharmacy and speak to a pharmacist who's available 90 days out of 90 days, not 1 day out of 90 days, which is mostly what you see with your primary physician. But those two people are who? The veterans, right? Who have put so much in for our country to be able to have an option. And then, of course, the Medicare Advantage patients, the 65 or older population that have paid their taxes for decades in order to get these benefits, but then they're subjected to get it in such a way which is not safe. So I feel that the spotlight is being shown now as far as all the detrimental things that mail order pharmacy has done, not just for the independent pharmacy community, but for the end user, which is the customer, which is the patient, right? I feel there's a different way to do it. There's no reason why a medication needs to be shipped from one side of the country to the other side of the country and take 10 days, put in vehicles that have no air conditioning, left in warehouses with no air conditioning. And to add insult to injury, might as well put it inside an oven and not even give a notification to the patient that the medication is within that oven. And as I sum it all up, let's hope none of these USPS workers are subjected to, gunpoint robbery like we're seeing. I've seen 3 of them here in Orlando in the last, let's say, month. So things are getting a little bit intense here, and we need to figure out a way to remove mail order pharmacy. Hashtag ban mail order. Make it where the patient can choose, not be subjected to this. Thank you for your time. Hi, Todd. Thanks for
And on
having me
This
on
Week in
this week.
Pharmacy, what a
So today, what I
special
want
opportunity to talk to somebody that's been a maverick, has been a fighter for independent community pharmacy and pharmacy in general for years with his work with the GPHA, the Georgia Pharmacy Association. He was president of that association, as well as just his work in the pharmacy industry. If you haven't heard about the story of Joe Ed Holt, you're going to want to really listen into this, because this is a very special, also shocking story that we're hearing. And we learned about this through LinkedIn. And I don't want to delay this anymore. I'm excited to have him here. Joe Ed, it's so good to see you. And thank you for making the time to talk with This Week in Pharmacy and our listeners.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me on. So.
Absolutely. All right. So let's talk about the latest. Is you have a post out right now on LinkedIn. If anybody wants to read it, you just go search Joe Ed Holt. Holt is spelled Holt. And it's really your opportunity to tell the story. And we'll reference this back and forth with today's interview. But right out of the gate, tell us about your background, how you got into pharmacy, and then we're going to get into this this shocking story.
Okay. I grew up, my dad was a doctor, but he went to pharmacy school first. So I've always grown up in the medical field, always grew up around doctors and pharmacists, especially I grew up in a very small town. So but my dad instilled in me a thing about wanting to take care of people. He still made house calls back in the 70s. He would pack up his little bag and go. And I just thought that was just the coolest thing because, everyone in the community looked up to him and respected him. So I knew I couldn't do, I knew that if I was a doctor, I could not be as good as he was. So I decided to go to pharmacy school and become a pharmacist. And it's been a great career. So.
All right. And so you've always had a sweet spot for the independent community pharmacy. Talk to us about how you started realizing the necessity of our community pharmacies and also your work with GPHA.
Well, once again, growing up in a small town, we didn't have chains. I don't think we had a chain drugstore until I think Rite Aid came in. But all the guys in the small town were independents, and they were just as highly looked up to as the doctors in town. So I really got an inkling for community pharmacy and taking care of people, and meeting them after hours or taking stuff to their home, or that kind of stuff that the chain just could not do. So I was in GPHA when I was in college. Kind of got out of it for a little while, then got back into it because I saw the need that a state organization could do, especially with the way that community pharmacy was being, just treated, with low reimbursements and terrible coverage and that kind of thing. So I thought that GPHA as a state organization, they were already doing some great stuff, and they still are doing some great stuff. I just wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to throw my hat in there to help any way I could. So
during that time, where were you working? Were you working at a independent community pharmacy store? Were you involved in something else? Like, who were you working for at the time?
You mean when I got into GPHA?
Yep.
I was working for a company called PruittHealth. They do long-term care, and I was actually doing long-term care consulting. So I really wasn't in the independent field, but all my friends were independents, and everyone I knew was an independent owner. So I really still had a heart for independence and still tried to support them in any way I could, which they've been tremendous in all that's been going on, since the event. So, but yeah, consulting, clinical consulting really is something that I love. But my heart's still with the independent pharmacist. So,
well, you know what? So my beginnings was in long-term care tech, long-term care technology, and all of our 100% of my clients. Oh, wait a second, that's not true. There were 3 that weren't considered privately owned, but I think I had over 200, pharmacies that were using the system that I presented and helped them purchase and implement and train. And so 3 of them were considered corporate, and the other 197 of them were independently owned. So independently owned is part of our pharmacy sector and industry within the United States, regardless of it being privately owned community, which is the traditional way of saying independent community pharmacy. But when you say independent pharmacy, it's still long-term care too.
Well, and funny thing is that the company PruittHealth was founded by a pharmacist named Neil Pruitt Sr., who owned an independent pharmacy, who got into long-term care because he was servicing a nursing home. The nursing home was going to go out of business. He purchased that nursing home, and that started the whole company. So they don't know. I don't think they remember this, but independent pharmacy is really at the roots of that company. So
yeah. So would you say that you're a consultant pharmacist focused on geriatrics and really kind of delve into dementia or falls or meds or something like that? You're really getting into that sector of pharmacy.
Yeah. We would go in every month and do chart reviews, look for like drug interactions, but more importantly, falls. Falls are huge in the long-term care section. And some of those falls are, some of the falls are, you really can't control, but some of them are related to medications. Dementia. There's a lot of people on meds that worsen their dementia or even cause some dementia-like symptoms that are being diagnosed as dementia that, so we played a very important role in going in, making sure all these things were taken care of. Also, deprescribing. You would not believe the amount of meds that some of these people are on that they don't need. So, that played a big role too. So,
all right. So let's define for the listeners so they understand this whole story. Let's define for them what is known as GA, which is the Georgia State SB 198. It says the title is Georgians with Intellectual and Development Disabilities Innovation Commission create. Now, when you read these bills, they can get real confusing to define it. But I want to give our listeners the cliff notes of what this bill, the impact that it would have on independent community pharmacy.
We at GPHA, we started hearing probably around the first of the year from a lot of local independent owners that the state health benefit plan for Georgia, the reimbursement was just terrible. The reimbursement had fallen. We were hearing from people that we don't normally hear from. So we knew that we needed to do something. And so we crafted a bill that originally started out in the House and had tremendous support. I mean, the bill passed unanimously in the House, bipartisan, Republicans, Democrats, both signed on and really were for the bill. When it got to the state Senate, the PBM lobbyists really were gunning for us. I mean, they were spreading all kinds of misinformation. My favorite one was they said, we went to the CVS Caremark website and got the prices from that website that showed the chains were being reimbursed. Let's say lisinopril for 30 lisinopril, they were being reimbursed $20. The local chain the local independent was being reimbursed $1.10. So it was just gross inadequacy in the reimbursement. The PBM lobbyists were like, oh, well, that's not really true because, look at all these obscure drugs that they're putting on this list. Yeah, obscure drugs like lisinopril, metformin, that's not obscure at all, but it got to the point where it wasn't going to pass in the Senate. And so we took this bill that was already there and kind of put our language into that bill to give it a try again. And it ultimately went through the Senate. We had one nay vote, but it was, once again, Republicans, Democrats all signed on, supported the bill, and the bill was passed. The bill actually was just going to say that CVS Caremark, through the state health benefit plan, had to reimburse both chains and independents an average fee of what it would normally do. So instead of these gross discrepancies, they would have to meet in the middle, and every pharmacy would be reimbursed the same amount. That was the bill. So it would not have, supposedly it would have been cost neutral because nobody was getting paid anything extra. It was just going to be paid an average of what everyone was already getting paid.
So once again, for the listeners, SB, now I'm losing, SB 198,
right,
was really passed by the House and the Senate.
Correct.
To protect independent community pharmacy, ultimately, to make sure that you're getting fair reimbursement, just like any other pharmacy would get, focusing in on the chain pharmacies that are out there. So
Correct.
Happening in other places in the United States. This is not news to the listeners. They know that they're being reimbursed. Independent community pharmacies are getting reimbursed drastically lower than other arrangements, starting with mail order. And we know that this is true because of Wall Street Journal's research, New York Times research. We know that it's finally out in the public, that everyone knows this. So the timing of this whole thing from a public relations perspective reached the desk of Governor Kemp, the Governor Kemp of Georgia.
Right.
And he rejects the bill, right?
Right. He had I guess it's everywhere, but you have 40 days after the bill passes. If he doesn't sign it, if he doesn't do anything, it gets put into law. Well, on the 40th day, he decided to veto it. He said that he had been informed that the bill was going to cost anywhere from $11 to $44 million to implement, which, we question because that's a really wide range. And if that's true, then it does show how CVS Caremark is not being the best option for Georgia. So, but he was told 11 to 44 million, and he vetoed the bill.
And that was based on his information that he received from a mix of organizations, including probably PCMA or the
Yes.
PPM lobbyists,
Yes.
to ensure that they did not have to pay equal. They did not have to pay independent community pharmacies the same, that they would either pay mail order or that they would pay themselves.
Correct. Yes. His information came. We think it was from CVS Caremark because they're the PBM over the state health benefit plan. But I'm sure he was informed from the lobbyists and everyone else too. So,
all right. So because of that, you write a passionate post because you're someone. And by the way, I remember reading the original post because you actually shared it with me. Very well written. Certainly not scathing to anybody's reputation. Very professional. Everything that you write on LinkedIn that I've watched you over the years, and you and I have been connected for years, has been professionally written. But you had great concerns of why in the world would Governor Kemp make this decision, obviously not very well informed, because what he was getting was absolutely not the case. It was going to penalize our independent community, and has penalized our independent community pharmacies. So you write something on LinkedIn out of concern because you want to bring it to the attention of fellow Georgians, but you also want to bring it to the attention of the nation, which I completely agree with you. And tell me what happened at that point.
Well, I put the post up. I put it on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram. Somehow it was up for about 3 or 4 hours. And I get a text from the COO of our company, basically saying, "Hey, we have some concerns about this post. Can you take it down?" Sure. If you want me to take it down, I'll take it down. You issue my paycheck. Also on that day, other Georgia pharmacists were posting things a lot worse than what I posted. So the word was getting out there that it was being expressed. So I took it down. The next day, I get a phone call saying that they have reviewed the post and that I was being fired. So they said that I violated the social media policy. I have read the social media policy. My attorney has read the social media policy. We don't feel that we violated the social media policy, but Georgia's a right to work state. So they can terminate you for any reason as long as it's not illegal.
Yep. And so you began your career with PruittHealth in September of 2006.
Correct.
You're terminated for a post that was basically standing as someone who has deep roots in supporting community pharmacy and also president of the Georgia Pharmacists Association. And you did it in a very educated manner and a professional manner, and wondering and challenging, just like a bunch of other professionals, including myself, who jumped on that bandwagon when I posted something on my own LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And you're let go from PruittHealth because of that.
Correct. No severance. The only thing they gave me was a label to send my computer back with. So,
geez. So it's very concerning to me that they're taking the short vision road in all of this. And I know that's probably a jumbled of words, but short vision, short-term vision, because long-term vision, this is going to be seen as a very bad black eye for Governor Kemp in making this decision, meaning making the decision not to support his independent community pharmacies. That ripples out into the community when it finally starts making sense, when we have big, huge publishers publishing articles packed with data from organizations like 3 Access Advisors. A shout out to Antonio Chacha, who's like the Jedi Master of PBM data interpretation. But now these balls have already started rolling, where it's going to open the eyes of the consumer and the small employers. And now Governor Kemp's decisions to do what he did is not going to end well for his politics.
Right.
And that goes back to showing that the politics of PruittHealth it's not going to be in their best interest for making the decisions that they did. So this is all very short term, in my opinion.
PruittHealth has always been a political animal. They've always, I remember during previous elections, they've sent, signs to put in front of our nursing homes saying support this candidate, or, they sent us T-shirts one time, support this candidate. So I'm sure in their mind, they try to, pal up with Governor Kemp. And I'm sure in their mind that this would, offend him or make him so that he would not be gracious to PruittHealth, because apparently they thought that me, a low-level consultant manager down in South Georgia, was going to be that influential to Governor Kemp. So, but they, we've tried since that date. It's been about 7 weeks. We've been trying to get them to just give me a fair severance, but they finally just said, no, we refuse. They said the post was egregious and they just want nothing else to do with it. So, now I get to, I refrained from telling the story because I thought that maybe, it wouldn't be more acceptable for them to give me a severance package. But now that they're not, and I didn't expect them to. I know enough about how they operate. I didn't expect to be fair and to do the right thing. So,
yes, but it's not out of anything other than trying to fight for independent community pharmacy, which in fact has a massive impact on public health.
Right.
Should definitely be a concern of Governor Kemp. That's number one. Number two, they are closing chain pharmacies left and right all over the nation.
Right.
The macroeconomics of the PBM models not even being able to support themselves. It's almost like they're eating themselves, especially CVS.
Well, Walgreens just announced they're closing all these stores, and the CEO of Walgreens made a statement that says something about like the current pharmacy model is not sustainable.
Yep.
Well, if the chains can't sustain the current pharmacy model, how are the independents supposed to sustain the current pharmacy model?
Correct.
And it's ironic because the new CEO of Walgreens used to run Express Scripts.
Yep.
So, he causes the problem and then starts whining about the problem, so it's independents are in a tough position these days, which I think everyone that listens to this podcast knows that. So,
but Governor Kemp needs as many functional, well-run pharmacies as possible.
Yes.
To be throughout the country, throughout his state, serving his constituents and serving people that desperately need them. And I don't know, maybe there's a secret plan that Pruitt's going to open up a whole bunch of pharmacies to fill in the blank. And they knew this was coming. And so they were getting funding from Governor Kemp to open up all these brand new pharmacies to backfill all of the pharmacies that are being closed. And maybe we'll see that come out in the next couple months and we'll be like, oh, okay, now we understand the reasoning in PruittHealth. But I think down deep inside, you and I both know that that's not the case.
That's not going to happen yet. PruittHealth's main function, like I said, they're a long-term care company that own a lot of nursing homes. Their main concern is funding for those nursing homes. So, pharmacy is just something that supplies the drugs, but their main concern, and which is it, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. The nursing homes need to be somebody's concern. But when you take it to that extreme, that you operate solely for the money, that's where the problem comes in.
And by the way, a shout out to my listeners, shout out to anyone listening to this, including anybody that might work at PruittHealth. you have every ability to come on this show, This Week in Pharmacy, and tell your tale. If there's a side of this that we don't understand that would have disrupted supporting independent community pharmacies or funding for independent community pharmacies or pharmacies in general, please make it known so that we can, clean this up. But right now, in my opinion, PruittHealth just has a really bad flavor and mark on their reputation because of us not understanding their strategy. And if it's just solely because of politics, that's just not good enough, because of the impact that this is having on small businesses, aka our independent community pharmacies, as well as the people that those pharmacies serve in their communities that aren't going to be able to stay open and aren't going to be able to because of this domino effect of pharmacies closing. So I'm just curious. So a shout out to PruittHealth, which says your families make us stronger. That's terrific. I love that byline. I hope it's a true byline. You have every right to come on This Week in Pharmacy and talk with us. Let us know what's going on between PruittHealth and Governor Kemp and why you would eliminate a 17-year-old veteran that is dedicated to not only long-term care pharmacy and our geriatric needs and our senior needs in the state of Georgia, but bigger picture, why Joe Ed Holt is fighting for independent community pharmacy too, just in a social media post that questioned the actions that we don't understand, because we know, and when I say we, I mean the listeners of this podcast, Antonio Chacha, other state organizations. A shout out to Shane, Senator Shane Reeves. By the way, he is a maverick and a fighter. He has some of the most tightest Tennessee state laws that are corralling and restricting what PBMs do to the state's Medicaid systems and the state's tax-funded systems. Governor Kemp, a shout out to you, buddy. Please reach out to Senator Reeves, because that guy ran pharmacies. He knows pharmacies. He has a long-term care background. A shout out to PruittHealth. PruittHealth, reach out to 12 Stone, which is Senator Reeves' companies, and learn more about the impact of what happens when you're restricting funding, correct funding to community pharmacies, and how you're going to force community pharmacies to become closed because they can't stay in business. And that's just a shout out to everyone. This program will always take multiple views and multiple insights. So I'd like to invite Pruitt to This Week in Pharmacy.
I think, because they have never explained how that post violated the social media policy. My separation notice, when it said reason for termination, said that I was a serious rule violator, which I'm thinking of putting that as my bio on Instagram. But so if they could come on and explain it, I wish they would. So at least I would know exactly why that I was terminated. So,
all right. Well, we want to say, I'm sorry that this has happened. I can imagine the pressures that's on you. I also know that you have a vast amount of experience in helping our seniors. A shout out to organizations that are looking for a pharmacist that has the heart that you do. It's in the right place, putting that patient out there first. Reach out to Joe Ed Holt. Get him on your team. This is a guy that will work hard for you. Obviously, it's most important that Joe Ed works the hardest for our seniors who desperate. By the way, you know this as well as I do, Joe Ed. You know that 11,000 new 65-year-olds every day for the rest of the year are coming to be within our population. So our seniors are increasing in this country, and they're going to need long-term care pharmacy experts to do exactly what you do. So I think there should be an opportunity for you in the near future with an organization that knows who you are and what you've been doing.
Even those in the community, not necessarily those that are in long-term care, but there's a lot of seniors in our communities that are going to have some pretty complex, comorbidities and health problems that are going to need some little special attention. So, we all need to get ready for that. So.
All right. Well, let's stay in touch. I'd love to have you back and see where you were when you land, because it's going to be a good. I have good energy about this. I think that you're gonna be brought into an organization that has the values that you want to work with and work for, putting patients first, putting the state of Georgia's public health first, and that can all be done and still supporting Governor Kemp. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And a shout out to Governor Kemp. God bless you, and how hard it is probably to be governor of a state. But you got some wrong information, and you need to dig into what the PBMs are doing right now, and how pricing on one hand for independents and pricing on another hand for mail order and chain pharmacy is absolutely wrong.
And I'm not an enemy. I mean, there's some stuff that Governor Kemp has done over the past, few years that I've actually thought was good. I'm not an enemy of Governor Kemp. I just think that this particular veto was wrong, and I think that everybody should have the opportunity to think their own thoughts. So
absolutely. Yes, that's isn't that what the United States and America is all about? But it seems to be being more threatened these days, unfortunately, more so than I've ever realized that it would be. But and it's because of power. It's because of power and greed and money that's out there. And it's unfortunate, because we want to make a living. I want to make a living. You do. Yeah. But our souls have to be sold sometimes, and we have to keep quiet when we see things that are absolutely not right. And when you stand up and you get smacked by your employer, or even let go in this situation, it's very unfortunate.
Yeah, and I want to say to all the other pharmacists out there that see things, I don't want them to be scared because of what happened to me. They need to speak out. There may be consequences, but the bigger picture is that community pharmacy needs every advocate that they can get. So if you've got something to say it. Don't be afraid. Things may happen, but I've got the feeling that things are going to be better for me. So,
I do too.
Yeah.
We're praying for you, and I think it will. I think we'll hear from you in the near future, and it'll be a good situation.
Yeah, I do too.
All right, Joe Ed Holt. Once again, link up with him on LinkedIn. Easy to find. Joe Ed Holt, HOLT. Joe, thank you so much for being on This Week in Pharmacy.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
All right, man. Thanks.
Hey, and on This Week in Pharmacy, we're talking about unity, and just got back from New Orleans. The unity at the McKesson Idea Share was explosive. It was exciting. There was so much positivity and energy there. People were ready to go. They're ready to dig in. We had several key interviews that I cannot wait for our listeners to listen to. We got an opportunity to meet with Senator Reeves. Senator Shane Reeves has been in the pharmacy industry his whole life. His whole family has been in the pharmacy industry. I think he's second or third generation. And Senator Reeves, he is a maverick. Like, if you want someone on your side with regards to PBM reform, this guy loves digging in, because he knows how to talk. He knows how to describe to other legislators who don't understand healthcare. They don't understand insurance or pharmacy benefit managers. So I can't wait for you to hear that episode. We're also talking with Doug Hoy, the CEO of the NCPA. We got an opportunity to talk with Dr. Michael Hogue from the APHA. My interview with Doug Hoy, I'm going to go back to that for a second, was very special, because we are all hands on deck with regards to reform, the importance of community pharmacy in general. So today's guest, which I can't wait to bring on, she is centered in the world of the National Community Pharmacy Association Foundation. She has been appointed as the new executive director. And when I saw this announcement on LinkedIn, I had to get her in. Sonia Pagnano, is that how you say it? Pagnano. Welcome to This Week in Pharmacy. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
All right. You have to give our listeners your background and what you're planning on doing as our executive director of the NCPA Foundation.
Absolutely. So if you're on my LinkedIn, you'll notice I am brand new to the pharmacy industry. I'm a long-term fundraiser and I've worked in nonprofits for a long time, but I really didn't know a lot about pharmacy aside from being a consumer of going to pharmacies. So I was really excited about this role as an executive director of the National Community Pharmacists Association Foundation, because not only are small businesses so integral to small towns, especially, and honestly to the economy of America in general,
Yeah.
but pharmacies, especially independently owned ones, they provide healthcare access to so many communities out there, especially marginalized communities. They need them, they need access to them. So a big, big piece of the NCPA Foundation since 1953, actually, it's been around for a very long time, has been to make sure that we are supporting the sustainability of independent community pharmacies. And we do that in a lot of different ways. We have several programs, some of which you might already be familiar with, like our disaster relief program that actually started around when Katrina happened. When we give out grants to pharmacies who are impacted by disasters. You might have seen the Hawaii wildfires last year, for example. We actually helped 2 pharmacies in Hawaii get back on their feet after that. We were some of the first funding they received, actually, after that disaster. So that's something we're really proud of, is making sure that pharmacies get support right away. A lot of times, as you probably are aware, if you're in pharmacy, insurance claims and all of that can take a long, long time. It's really important that we support pharmacies in that way. We also have a student business plan competition that we do each year and scholarships.
I love this one. I love seeing the excitement of the students, the future of our industry, and the creativity that comes out of that.
Especially the creativity. I think in the world we're in now, it's so important, especially with PBM reform and all of these things impacting community pharmacies, that we become a bit more creative, right, with our revenue streams, how we're setting up our pharmacies, that sort of thing. So this competition is a great opportunity for students to start thinking about that. And a lot of them actually have incorporated those into actual businesses afterward. So we're hoping to get some of those stories out in the near future so that people can read about that. But that's been a really exciting program for a long time as well. And then we also give out awards each year at the NCPA convention, along with our scholarship awards. So those awards, some of them have been around for a long time, and a lot of it is to celebrate independent pharmacy ownership, people who are blazing the trail, so to speak, for pharmacy owners and the profession itself, as well as those who are giving back in unique ways. So I'm really excited to be at the convention in October. I'm sure you'll be there. If anybody wants to come and visit, we will have a booth there. And I'd love to meet people at the convention, hear your thoughts on what it is we can do to help independent community pharmacy owners, especially now with the challenges that are being faced. Are there new grant programs we could start? We're also looking for, obviously, gifts to the foundation. If you're open to supporting us in that way, there are so many ways to give, not just cash options. We do accept gifts of crypto, stock, donor advised funds, planned gifts. I mean, you name it. We can help facilitate that for you as well. We are a 501c3 organization, so gifts made to the foundation are tax deductible. And we've gotten Charity Navigator's 4-star rating and Candid's Platinum Transparency Seal as well. So we are very proud of that reputation, and we really think this is a unique way to give back to the independent pharmacy ownership community. And it's a way to make sure that we're supporting pharmacy owners from the start, right? We support them as students, and we support them when their businesses are struggling, and we try to support them beyond that as well through ownership development opportunities. I'm sure you've seen NCPA's new core program. Sometimes it's also good to go back to the basics. So I think that's really important as well, that we continue to support efforts like that.
Sonia, I'm so glad you're here. You know, there is a benefit to having an outsider that may not understand the complexity of the depth of pharmacy, especially community, and like you said, what we're going through, because you bring a sense of hope, a sense of energy, and the experience and the understanding that you're bringing from other fundraising organizations is going to help empower the NCPA Foundation and bring new light to it. So I'm thrilled that you're here. A shout out to the executive team for bringing you on and seeing that a new pathway is in place. It comes at a time, and I'm celebrating my 20th year, 2024 in the pharmacy industry, and it comes at a time that pharmacy care is drastically transforming. It's becoming much more clinical based and much more treatment program based. And with that, I think that there's going to be other opportunities for the foundation, just like you referenced, to design programs to foster and support new ideas and new ways of generating better pharmacy care, more stabilization in communities, because the community pharmacy is so important, and not necessarily just the independent pharmacy, but also our chain community pharmacies. And what's happening is hundreds of community pharmacies are being shut down just because of the macro of what's happening in our PBM reform situation. And now that means that the independent that's in that community, instead of it being a 5-mile radius or a 10-mile radius, now their care at a 30-mile, at a 50-mile radius, sometimes depending on if there's pharmacy desert patches. I mean, that care is going to expand. So remote patient monitoring, telehealth, being able to use technology to connect into pharmacy care providers, that's huge. And now NCPA Foundation gets to kind of pay attention to like what's happening and where the needs are, and be able to raise funds, like you said, for disasters, but also for the up and coming ideas that are being pulled through some of our beginner pharmacists.
For sure. And there's a lot to be said for leveraging tech, right, in our work.
Yeah.
But something that struck me was one of the pharmacies we supported in Hawaii. They were like, we didn't have a way to communicate. That was one of the first big challenges, was how do we communicate? And another pharmacy said, like, how do we get medication and everything when we don't have our store up anymore? And luckily they had a sister store several miles out. But again, that expanded that footprint of coverage area that they had to essentially keep track of and make sure that they had staff at both areas and people to manage that distance by driving. So that's all these things that come up in times, especially of disaster, that if we already had some things in place ahead of time. So like if we're leveraging tech, we should also have a backup. Like what happens when that tech falls through? What happens when those things don't work anymore? And that's where like that long-term sustainability piece, I think, is really important too, to think about, not just thinking about here and now, but thinking about 10, 20 years from now. I think a lot of pharmacy owners, for example, they think about the next generation, right? Who's going to take on this pharmacy in the next generation?
Yep.
And I think having that mindset is going to be really important as a foundation as we continue to develop the programs as well.
Absolutely. Well, I can't wait to meet you in Ohio, in Columbus, in October 26th, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, listeners, reach out. If you're watching on YouTube, you see Sonia's profile on LinkedIn. So please go look her up on LinkedIn. If you're listening and you're not watching us on YouTube or on video, Sonia, it's easy to find her on LinkedIn. If you can't, please reach out to Pharmacy Podcast Network. I'm going to connect you with Sonia as well. Congratulations on your appointment, the executive director of NCPA Foundation. If there's anything that our news program can ever do for you, even if you have things that are happening on a timely basis, please send us those clips and we'll definitely get that out. This is the pharmacy industry's news program in podcasting form, and we want the foundation to use it too. But thank you so much for being part of This Week in Pharmacy.
Thanks for having me.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.